different results. I'll ask this panel if it's the right strategy for Cam Ward around the horn.
How dare you besmirch Manhattan Beach's own Josh Rosen?
Well, I bet you he still remembers the teams that passed on him. I mean, he's not a forgetful man. He's brilliant. 31 others. Wharton School of Business. We'll get to that. 2 games going in different directions in the All-Star verse is where we start. NHL, game is in a better place, we heard this weekend. NBA, crazy, cancel All-Star weekend. Let's just give everybody a break since we're so miserable around this time. That was Kevin Durant joking, of course. 4 nations face off, headed for a USA-Canada dream final Thursday night. It's a rematch of Saturday's Throwdown, which delivered on a lot of different levels. Harry Lyles Jr. around the horn to you. Are we approaching a game-changing moment for the NHL?
I think the potential is definitely there, Tony, especially if that game is anything like we saw the first one. And this one might be more competitive because, as Emily Kaplan reported, we should see both Tkachuk brothers and Cale Makar is also going to be playing for Canada, their best defenseman. So that is going to up the stakes of this game, even though the U.S. also has their own injuries. But talking about this particular event, because you have something now on your hands where you're intriguing more people that don't typically watch your game, that's automatically a win for you. And the reason that this has worked is because you've got the best players in the world playing, a lot of them fighting injuries, by the way, to still try to play. You've got intense games as well. And if we're being completely honest, one of the reasons that this has succeeded is because the U.S. is one of the favorites to win in the minds of many people. Nobody in any sport, on any team, in any city in this country is going to support a loser. And so because we're in it, everybody's enjoying.
Kevin Blackstone around the horn to you.
And all of that is true. In fact, there are 15 players, I believe, on the U.S. roster who are part of the country's development program. So that's great because you get all these young stars out there, people who you can identify with them now. They get talked about, you see them play, and it's great. But this network, on its app, over the weekend, after that first game, how did they promote it? If you went to the app, they promoted it with a headline talking about the 3 fights off the top and a video about the 3 fights off the top. And to me, if you were going to talk about a new day with hockey, turning the page, promoting the game, why would you want to start with the old narrative of guys fighting? That seems to me to be the absolute wrong way to go. I want to celebrate the athletes.
Utilizing that word may be the wrong way to go. I see Pablo Torre shaking his head. Please, go ahead.
I clicked on that video, and I would click on it again. I want the fights. I want the fights. I mean, KB, look, it comes in this larger geopolitical context, of course, right? Canada, the United States, all of the stuff swirling in D.C. Yes, there's bad blood, but then also on top of that, there is the deeper thing, which is pride in one's country. And so this is something that, yes, in hockey, what I will grant you is that hockey can get away with some stuff that the NBA, by contrast, cannot. You can't have 3 fights break out in the first 9 seconds of the game, almost as if like there were parliamentary procedural rules, Tony, around everybody. Okay, let's clear out. Let them take care of this. We saw that 3 times in a row, which made it incredible to me. But the bottom line here is that here you have players who care deeply to the point of fighting, literally and figuratively, for their country. That's what I want to see on Thursday. That's what I saw on Saturday.
George Sedano around the horn to you.
Tony, to add to Pablo's point, and really to just kind of try to go against KB's point, which is violence sells, okay? That's the reality. The NFL is the gladiator sport of our time because of the violence of it, and people are into the violence of it. The UFC has been one of the hottest sports in regards to viewership over the last several years because of the violence of the sports. The fight sells, okay? You got to keep the fight in that scenario. But wrapping yourself around the flag always works. Tony, my sister, okay, has never watched a full hockey game in her entire life. I was texting her yesterday.
Inside information.
And she was telling me she was watching this. She was watching the European matchup yesterday. Forget about not just watching the U.S. matchup. She's now watching the other matchups in this particular contest. I talked to some people who were there, and they talked about the atmosphere there being as electric as anything they've ever been to. They couldn't compare it to anything they've ever been to in regards to American professional sports before. So this stuff has absolutely been a home run. And if you can wrap yourself in the flag and tap into that stuff, you can win in
Kevin
professional
Blackstone
sports.
back in.
But fighting in the NFL, violence, I should say, in the NFL is not gratuitous, right? It is part of the game. And I know that fighting is legislated in to the NHL rule book. But the other thing we also know is that hockey at the international level, fighting is not a part of it. And so for me to see that once again, particularly with the USA team, is a turnoff. And I think that you can promote the game, promote the sport, promote the athletes. We love seeing Crosby skate. We love seeing Ovechkin score without having to go down this old path, this dark alley of the violence that is not necessarily part of the game.
I do think that's valid, KB. I think the thing that I felt that the fighting that we saw was akin to was sort of when Kobe ran through Pau Gasol's chest during the 2008 Olympics. Like, that sort of set the table for the tempo of that particular game, and I think that's what we've seen in this.
Pablo Torre.
Yeah, look, I understand that violence, when it's gratuitous, KB, can be too much. This, in terms of drawing those casuals in, was just the right amount to me.
NBA All-Star now. What went wrong? Maybe what went most wrong? DQs in the skills competition for shenanigans. Scratch in the game for LeBron. Draymond ripping it before it even started. I'm going to go and say one thing, then hang up and listen here. There was 33 minutes total time of basketball playing in the 3-hour-plus events. George Sedano, floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, more basketball, right. And here's the thing, though, Tony. That's the obvious answer. More basketball. These games needed to be longer. 40 points was too fast. I get all that stuff. Here's the other thing. We wouldn't be in this situation if these guys would have given the effort that they gave on Sunday sometime over the last 5 years, right? Had they done that, we would still have 5 years ago, if they would have given this effort, we still would have had East versus West. We wouldn't have been picking teams like a playground. We wouldn't have been doing something where I was at the event and had to question out loud, who's on what team again? Who's on Shaq's team? Who's on Kenny's team? I didn't know who to root for, okay? Like, I think that was a fair criticism too, is who am I rooting for? What is my rooting interest here? Is it just individuals? Okay, great. Individuals is one thing, but I don't even know where they're at, like who they're playing with. It just didn't make a lot of sense. I think if you're the NBA, I don't think the tournament format is a bad format, as we just saw with hockey, but I think if you can find a way to, again, tap into perhaps wrapping yourself in the flag, I think that is a much better answer.
I want to get to that again in a second, but you were there. That was your opinion. Other people there. Was the feeling this was a step backwards for the NBA?
Tony, they had actual momentum through the first two games. The first two games, people were into it. I think that the pace was good, and even though it was short, it was fine. But as soon as those first two games were over, it felt like everything just dragged, like time just stopped. And especially when you started the final game and you stopped at 5 minutes in, you had a 5-minute area of play of basketball and about 35 minutes surrounding it, before it and after it, where there was nothing. And people are coming to play basketball, to watch basketball. It's like if you owned a pizzeria, Tony, and all of a sudden you're like, nah, we're not selling pizza anymore. We're going to sell hamburgers. Okay, that's not what people are coming for. People are coming for basketball.
Pablo Torre, around the horn of you.
Yeah, and look, I think you want a little bit of kick on those. Look, I'm a jalapeno on my pizza guy. I'm a pepperoni. I like it a spicy sopressata, Tony, okay?
Right, that's good.
I don't believe that this is a bad opinion. I'm being punished for reasons that are beyond my control. What I will point out is that when it comes to putting in some drama, yeah, you want natural enmity, right? So when it comes to the manufacturing of all of it, it's hard to keep track because we're also trying to manufacture something synthetic. How do you get the natural rivalry, that natural level of care? Yeah, you tap into something that could put some humiliation, some pride on the line, which is why, of course, and we'll get to this, U.S. versus the world is the solution to me. But I'll just add one more thing. Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama trying to game the system in the skills contest, I found that endearing. And granted, the rules should change and be clarified and they shouldn't have been rewarded, but give me guys who want to win however they can. Give me those guys who are scheming up ways to be ultra competitive. I love that. You just got to channel
let's be truthful
by way of
what
the
they
format.
did. They decided shooting didn't need to go anywhere near the basket. That's what they decided. I mean,
because they wanted to win.
Yes.
Because they wanted to win that bad.
This is all part of the bigger conversation. Let's just go there then. Giannis brought it up, USA versus the world. We brought it up the week in advance of this. We've all seen this coming. Should the NBA All-Star Game just go straight to USA versus International? Could they field the 12-on-12 team? Kevin Blackstone, around the horn of you.
No.
Absolutely, I think that would make sense for the NBA to do teams like that. And basically that means getting back to regular basketball. That's what people want to see. I mean, I don't need all of these, in the famous words of Around the Horn director Miriam Leger, I don't need the shenanigans. I turn in to watch basketball. That's the way it used to be. I don't need Kevin Hart.
Well, you're getting points, but I'm going to give Miriam those points when we get to her in panel 4. Harry Lyles Jr., USA versus the world. Could they pull that off, or is that just a pipe dream?
No, I think that they could. To me, it's got to be that or East and West, because what we saw on Sunday was an absolute joke for a number of different reasons. Yes, absolutely, because honestly, I don't even think, George, that the effort that we saw on Sunday was that much better than what we've seen in any other All-Star game ever. It just didn't feel that way, because it felt like we were looking for something. I personally did not feel that when I was watching it from home. And also, the biggest issue about Sunday was the fact that it was a second Saturday. Like, there were too many other bells and whistles. We didn't need Kevin Hart interjecting during the game. The fact that we brought Mr. Beast out in a bundle of cash was just mind-blowing to me. That was the biggest red flag, I think, of anything that we saw the NBA do. I can appreciate the fact that Adam Silver wants a better product for Sunday, but we saw an overreaction and overcorrection. The right thing to do would be USA versus the world, or go back to
George,
East
you're
versus
shaking
West.
your head. No, you don't think they can fill out a roster
okay.
of internationals? Is that what you're saying?
Let me get to that. Just give me a second. To Harry's point about them trying, I don't know how it looked on television. In person, I can tell you there was actual effort there. I will tell you this. In the Wembanyama game, there were 6 blocks in that game, and I believe 4 steals in that game alone. We haven't had 6. Hold on. There haven't been 6 blocks in the last 3 All-Star games combined, Tony. So let's not. And Damian Lillard was tying guys up for a jump ball in the final game. There was actual effort on defense in that game. I don't think they're there just yet on the international. It is the right move. I just don't know how they bridge that gap, because there's really like maybe 8 to 10 guys who are legit all-stars in the international game, or that would be from international countries. You don't get 12 just yet. So there's still a ways away from getting there, which is why I think...
Pablo, go ahead.
Go ahead. Who
I want to play that tape of George. I want to play that tape of George in the international locker room next year. Yes, there should be a favorite. There should be, and it should be the case also that the top 5 players for the world. But George, if you gave me 5, right? If you gave me Jokic, Wemby, I mean, look. Luka, right? Like, go down
Giannis,
the list.
Porzingis, Sabonis, Markkanen, Wagner, Şengün.
At the very top.
Siakam.
I agree with George.
Gilgeous-Alexander.
10 to 12. 10 to 12 is dicey.
But
I want to see it.
Last one on this, LeBron. There was outrage over that. An afternoon announcement that he wouldn't play. George, were you outraged? Was it egregious?
I wasn't outraged, Tony. I wasn't outraged, but I wish that him and the league, both of them, could have done a better job of getting someone else to replace him. Anthony Edwards, too, although Anthony Edwards at least
outraged.
Yeah, if he took somebody's spot, that's the problem. Otherwise, I have no criticism.
That it came up one day, morning of. Harry, outraged?
No, not at all.
Let's take a break. Bars on that.
17.
Potential number 1 or number 2 or number 3 NFL draft pick Cam Ward with a word to teams if he isn't number 1 or number 2 or number 3. Quote, I'll remember that. We've heard this before as far as personal motivation. Aaron Rodgers, Josh Rosen. This is also in response to criticism over him not playing in the second half of the bowl game this year, the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Miami has said that was a team decision. Ward took the brunt of criticism there. George, what to buy, what to sell?
Well, I'll attack the last part first. It's silly. It is a team decision. They needed to see who their backup quarterback was going to be, potentially the quarterback of the future. They realized he's not good enough. They went after Carson Beck. As far as him, Tony, he was a legit 0-star athlete coming out of Incarnate Word. Okay, he had to go to Incarnate Word, then went to a Power 4 school, Washington State, had the best season arguably in Miami in the last 20 years, led them to that. I wouldn't bet against this kid at all.
Sure, but to motivate himself, you're saying his past is true for his future, that he motivates himself over his past.
That's his way. Everything is a chip on the shoulder, for sure.
Yeah, if I were him, I would also be throwing this message out, because if that is what you're going to hold over his head, the fact that he played in one half of a bowl game. Mind you, Tony, the non-CFP bowl games, these are basically a first spring game for these schools now. That's why Mario Cristobal also came out and said, yes, that was the plan for us all along. Our guy did not quit on our football team. So if that is stopping you from drafting Cam Ward, then you probably don't deserve to have Cam Ward on your football team.
KB.
And I also dismissed the criticism of him for not playing in a half of that game. He shouldn't have played in the game at all. If I were his advisor, you know you're going high in the draft. You don't want to take that chance to get hurt and watch your draft status fall. So lucky for him, he got out of that first half without injury, and now he's ready to go number 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever he's going to go in the draft.
But that's why I sell the threat, because he is going to go 1 or 2 or 3. Josh Rosen, Tony, went 10 overall. Aaron Rodgers, 24 overall. So the whole idea that Cam Ward, you better draft this guy, or you're going to try really hard against the 1 or 2 teams that pass on him. I'm just like, okay, were you going to try hard before that, or I presume
well, that's always
and he will.
that's always the debate here. We'll move on. Buy or sell two, Red Sox. When they signed Alex Bregman, there was a question over Rafael Devers or Bregman. Who's on third? Who moves? It appears there's something under the red. Third base is my position, Devers said through an interpreter. It's what I play. I don't know what their plans are. We had a conversation. I made it clear what my desires were. Whatever happens from here, I don't know. So that was Devers putting his milepost in the ground. Alex Cora had an answer yesterday. Let's take a listen.
He has a lot of pride. We know that, and he feels like he's a third baseman. He's going to work out as a third baseman. It's not about Bregman or Devers or Cora. It's about the Red Sox.
Cora, including that the decision made is by a person who wasn't here originally, Kyan Bloom, with Devers. Harry Lyles Jr., how do you view it all? Is there a problem here?
Tony, this is a big problem. You mentioned the interpreter. Somebody had asked him if he was willing to be a designated hitter, and before the interpreter could translate it to Devers, he said no. Like, if that is the case, that is the most definitive no that we have ever seen in the history of baseball. And also, they have a prospect, Christian Campbell, who is coming up. He also plays third base, so he's going into at some point, whether on the opening day roster or otherwise, is also going to be here. Someone cannot play third base, and it looks like it's not going to be Devers.
Wait, but what was that? The most definitive no in the history of Major League Baseball?
What is that?
Yes. Skipping over your interpreter.
Good power.
Kevin Blackistone.
This is a glorious problem. They're going to fight over who's going to be the third baseman with their manager, with the fans who are going to watch him play down in spring training. I love this. And you know what? He's absolutely right. This is what he does. And look, we know Bregman got a Gold Glove the other year, but it's not like he's Brooks Robinson playing against the field here. He had 10 errors last year at third. How many?
Wait, the other year was last year, by the way. So let's get this right. Bregman is the reigning Gold Glove at third base, whereas Devers historically has not been that. Pablo Torre, who should be playing third base for the Red Sox?
Devers, it should be Bregman. Devers has, I believe, led the AL in errors at third since 2019. I believe that's the statistic that might be relevant here. Also, the whole issue with Devers is that he's feeling like I just got a 10-year, $300+ million deal, to which, of course, I believe it was Don Draper, Tony, who once said, that's what the money is for. Like, yeah, you might get moved around, but you get your money. That seems to be the way of sports.
Tony, Pablo was close. It was actually, he's led the league in errors at third base since 2017, not 2019.
Okay.
And here's the thing, it is a big problem, a $297 million problem, because they signed him to a 10-year contract worth $330 million. So this is a monstrous problem for the Red Sox.
Yeah. So DH, someone's going to have to play second base, someone's going to have to DH at times. They can get through this, right? This doesn't have to spin them out. Or you seem to think, Pablo, that it could.
No, I think it's messy if Devers wants to be recalcitrant, but typically you get over it because, again, you get paid to get over it.
Harry Lyles, Kevin Blackistone, please.
Play the position.
We'll remember this.
Sedano Torres.